The movie is called Barbie in Princess Power, but Barbie's superhero name is Super Sparkle. They're both kind of poor excuses for a superhero name, but at least call your movie the title character's name. Even the actual doll is called Princess Power, and the Super Sparkle name is nowhere on the box. So you got all these little girls playing with a toy they think is called Princess Power. Yeah, she's a princess, and she has powers, and she has a secret identity, so she can't actually call herself Princess Power in the movie, but that's really confusing branding, if nothing else. That'd be like if you called a Wolverine movie Knife Hands. The following is an in-depth story analysis. If you haven't seen this film, you might want to before watching this review. Well, Merry Christmas to me. My wife is making me review a Barbie movie. I had an extra slot because one of our Patreon requesters didn't ask for anything, so instead of being that gift giver that just grabs something generic and slaps the guy's name on it, I decided to let my wife pick this one. Naturally, she went for the most random and unanalyzable sounding thing, Barbie in Princess Power. Yep, I'm reviewing a Barbie movie. When I started this series in 2009, it never occurred to me something like this could happen, but everything's cashing in on the superhero craze now. Anything could end up being a superhero movie. A psychological thriller by M. Night Shyamalan could wind up being a superhero movie, and you wouldn't even know it until the last 60 seconds. It sounds crazy, but it could happen. There's a Garfield superhero movie and a VeggieTales superhero movie. There's still that Super Buddies thing I'm dreading. I'm just grateful that, so far, the Despicable Me movies have stayed in a world with only villains and spies and no real superheroes. If Super Minions ever happens, Hollywood will have to stop making superhero films altogether before I actually review it. And even then, I might arrange an unfortunate accident for myself to get out of it. My wife wasn't huge into dolls as a kid, and she's not a big Barbie fan. She hasn't seen this movie, she just wanted to torture me with it. Sarah thought it would be really funny to make me watch a prissy, pink, cute movie aimed at 7-year-old girls. Well, the joke's on you, Sarah, because it's not bad. It's pretty typical direct-to-video kiddie fare, but I honestly expected to either have no idea what I was looking at or be completely bored to tears, with Barbie wearing a superhero costume and flying around, but not really doing anything except talking to her friends about boys or whatever. This movie certainly isn't made for me, and it is at the far right end on the ultra-cutesy scale, but that's to be expected with this material. The girls in this are all sickeningly positive and happy, reminding me of that fake outtake at the end of Toy Story 2, where flight attendant Barbie has been smiling so long her face hurts. What impressed me right away is how completely self-aware and tongue-in-cheek the movie is about all that. It knows it's based on a toy, and just like the Lego direct-to-video movies, like Justice League and Star Wars, it's written to feel like children are making up the story, playing with their toys. So it doesn't watch like this is supposed to be the lore and character background to inform the dolls like Ninja Turtles and Transformers were with their action figure lines in the 80s and their animated series. It watches like one possible way to play with Barbie, like an example of the myriad ways to use these toys, rather than a rigid box it's putting children in. I think we've come into a new era for extra media related to children's products, and it's a positive one. A lot of shows and movies, with the Lego Movie as the prime example, encourage children to use their imaginations by delivering a product that sets that example, rather than making them want to recreate stories told by other people. They encourage real imaginative play by making the characters in the story look like the actual physical toys the kids are playing with, instead of the toys representing characters they see on TV. They say, here's the fun way we chose to play with our toys, now get them yourself and do something with them. It's the difference between the Ninjago TV series, which does look like Legos but feels more like a traditional standard narrative-driven show, and the Lego Ninjago movie, which feels like kids playing with action figures. It's annoying that Lego has to be in that title just for uniformity with the Lego Movie and the Lego Batman movie. It's redundant. Ninjago is already a Lego property. Saying Lego Ninjago is not that far away from ATM Machine. Anyway, I don't mean to say that the regular Ninjago show discourages imaginative play, or that kids can't or never create very serious mythologies and storylines when they play, that kids can only be silly with their toys. But I think it's easier to communicate in a humorous way that these are supposed to be toys, and the people making the movie are playing with them. I don't know if this is intentional, but I think it's interesting that the Barbie doll of Princess Power I made fun of in the teaser not only doesn't mention her actual superhero name, Super Sparkle, it says nothing at all about the story of the movie, like boxes for action figures based on a cartoon usually do. It could have been called Superhero Barbie, just like Dentist Barbie, Student Teacher Barbie, Football Coach Barbie, US President Barbie, and McDonald's Cashier Barbie. Those are all real, by the way. She's not tied to a mythology. Cast her in any role and in any story you want to. I can't think of a whole lot of other toys with that kind of versatility. Now, I don't think it's too limiting to the imagination to work within the boundaries of a pre-established world. I mean, I loved making up Batman and Ninja Turtle stories with my action figures, and a little direction can help focus a kid's imagination. But I also think it's important to let kids run wild with their imaginations, to tell them that there is no right way to play when they're exploring their own ideas, which is what the Lego Movie was all about and part of why I love that film. And I think open-ended toys like Barbie help to deliver that message. The Barbie video series on the whole operates in that spirit. Barbie herself doesn't really have a preset mythology or background. I mean, she has her cast of characters in regular Barbie stories like Ken and Stacy, but she can be whatever a story wants her to be. Princess, teacher, police officer, anything. Until I watched this, I didn't realize that, at least in these fantasy-based movies, Barbie is often cast as different characters, like an actress, which I think, again, encourages little girls to play with her any way they want to. She's like the Cate Blanchett of CG doll actresses. Rapunzel, Thumbelina, a mermaid, Clara in the Nutcracker, tons of fantasy and fairy tale characters and so many more movies than I realized existed. Barbie can be Barbie, or she can be Kara, a princess who's tired of her droll, royal life and wants to do something more important with it. This movie doesn't include, I don't think, any of Barbie's regular friends. It watches like a totally original, if not pretty generic, superhero movie, and the only thing that makes it Barbie is its bubbly tone, plastic-looking characters, and places that look like Barbie playsets, and items that look like doll accessories. The 3D animation is adequate, but a little bland. It gets away with cutting a lot of corners because the doll look feels intentional. I usually don't like these featureless, under-detailed, plastic-looking characters in CG animation, but there's a really good excuse for it here. They're dolls. Still, the characters in the Lego movies look like they're made of plastic, and I'm talking about the ones that don't move like stop motion, the direct-to-video movies that don't drop the frame rate, and don't have that framing device of a child literally making everything happen. And there's an excellent attention to detail in those. Scuff marks, scratches, things reflecting off the surface of the minifigs. This movie doesn't go so above and beyond. It looks maybe just above the level of PlayStation 2 cutscenes, and looks a little outdated by 2015. But it's not hard to look at, and again, I found it easy to forgive the animation to some degree within the context of the story. So Barbie is playing Kara, a princess in a hilariously modern monarchy. Her parents, the king and queen, rule Windermere, an American-looking city on an island with the palace on a smaller island connected by a bridge across the ocean. The name Kara sounds to me like a tactical choice, given that the Supergirl TV show had been hyped so hard and was just about to come out. Might be a coincidence, but there's plenty of evidence that this writer, Marcia Griffin, has more than a cursory understanding of superhero properties. And she might have chosen that name in anticipation of Supergirl's potential popularity with little girls. That show came out 6 months after this was released, so it could be a coincidence, but given some of the references in the movie, I'd be surprised if it wasn't at least an homage to Supergirl, even if there was no commercial calculation in the choice. Kara has a standard princess problem. Her benevolent monarch parents are overprotective and want to shelter her from every possible danger. To their credit, they don't lock her up in the castle or track her phone or anything. There's so much medieval-looking stuff in this movie, I have to keep reminding myself it's a 21st century monarchy. But they won't allow her to do anything but boring traditional princess duties like waving in parades. What she really wants to do is build a community garden. Yeah, she's hardcore. She wants to go into the city and plant stuff for the townspeople. What a rebel. It's an odd obsession and seems kinda lame, but Marcia Griffin is thinking about the material she's working with, and that is a very Barbie-sounding thing. And to be fair, even though her big passion isn't very dangerous, she is still a thrill-seeker and a risk-taker. We're introduced to Kara flying around in a glider airplane thing built by her twin scientist/inventor friends. So it's not like she's never done anything exciting, and then when she gets superpowers, she's suddenly all about the adventure. But it's still hilarious that this girl who's basically an extreme sports enthusiast won't stop talking about planting a garden. It does demonstrate just how paranoid her parents are, that they're just terrified of her even walking into the city. And there's no class politics here either. They're not concerned with her mixing it up with the commoners because they see themselves as superior. They just think the city is really dangerous and it's safer in the castle. There's nothing about a suitor she's supposed to marry who she doesn't care about, or a peasant guy she falls in love with but the parents don't approve of. I really expected that sort of story with this. It's not a Jasmine from Aladdin situation. There's actually no love story at all, which is surprising because I thought it was setting up one. And I'll discuss that in a bit. I'm conflicted on the garden thing because, on the one hand, it seems lame. To the movie's credit, Kara is way more fun and intrepid than I expected, so I'd think she'd be a little more ambitious than that. On the other hand, it watches like the story is mostly working with what a little girl might have at her disposal with her Barbie toys, and Barbie has a garden party playset. Although, I doubt if there's an erupting Barbie volcano. Meanwhile, there's a bad guy who is a lot like an Aladdin character, Jafar, in that he works in the castle but is secretly working to overthrow the royal family, but not marry the princess. This movie avoids anything remotely scandalous, creepy, or provocative. And again, that's expected with this material. The villain is Baron von Ravendale, who thinks he's entitled to the throne because his family ruled the kingdom centuries ago. And the only reason he's not king now is because his family once lost their claim in a game of rock, paper, scissors. Which is pretty funny. So he's working on a potion to give himself superpowers. Not sure if it's science or magic, but everything else in this movie is pseudoscience. But his frog henchman, Bruce, accidentally drops the potion down the drain. It douses a caterpillar. A few days later, the caterpillar turns into a butterfly, and the butterfly kisses Kara in a clear homage to the radioactive spider that bites Peter Parker. Throughout the movie, the Baron works on recreating the potion, while Kara becomes a superhero, Super Sparkle, named that by her techno-babbly friends, who make her a costume in a scene that reminds me of the montage of bad homemade suits in the pilot of Lois and Clark. She spends a lot of the movie flying around the city saving cats and citizens, and it watches like open-world Spider-Man video game The Movie. She stops purse snatchers, bank robberies, saves hot guys from burning buildings, etc. And she starts to do it, we're told at the end, more for the glory than because it's the right thing to do. She basks in the limelight too much. Or at least that's what we're told her character arc is supposed to be. It's not brought to the forefront enough, and I actually needed the movie to spell that out for me at the end because she doesn't really do anything wrong. I guess her attitude isn't right, and that's why it's supposed to be a problem when she abandons her garden project and, stops people from dying. But I honestly didn't understand where it was going with that until she admits at the end that she lost track of why she wanted to do something important in the first place. This is a real by-the-numbers superhero origin story, but call my standards low. I'm impressed that this is actually really a superhero movie, not just a Barbie movie with superhero powers and aesthetics. There's a real reverence for the material the movie is borrowing from and sometimes lampooning. There aren't ultra-obscure references, but the writer and director seem to actually like this genre and know something about it. There's a lot of Spider-Man in here. The sort of radioactive butterfly kiss, which I legitimately like. If Barbie of all people is going to get superpowers, that sounds like precisely the way it should happen. Kara does the web-spinning hand gesture when she's testing out her powers, just to see if it does anything. The radioactive spider is actually brought up, and there's a cat named Parker, which is almost certainly a nod to Spider-Man. There's also a direct reference to Superman the movie, when Kara catches a construction worker falling to his doom, and she says, "I've got you." He quotes Lois when Superman saves her in the helicopter incident, "You've got me, who's got you?" I don't want to praise the movie for being derivative, and I also don't mean to beat a dead horse, but it watches like little girls influenced by superhero movies they've seen and making their own with their Barbies. So it's got a lot of familiar tropes, like the villain who creates the hero, the Baron made the potion that gives Barbie superpowers, and the family member or significant other the hero has to keep their secret from because they'd be too afraid the hero will get him or herself hurt. That's her parents in this one instead of a boyfriend or a husband. But it also takes some reasonably unexpected turns, like Kara being outed to the entire kingdom before the third act. We've seen all this stuff before, and it's not at all thought-provoking when it might have taken the chance to be. How do the townspeople feel about the princess flying around the city doing the police's job for them, for instance? But the people making this thing are clearly having fun with it, and so it's hard not to go with it at least a little. I also like the joy Kara has when she gets superpowers. Flying is easy and obvious, but it's also appropriate for this character because she feels restricted and all she wants is to be free. That desire is inherent in her death-defying stunts, especially the glider she flies around in at the beginning. Now she can do the same thing just by leaping in the air, and the movie treats it the way it should, with awe and wonder. She gets exactly what she wants, and then discovers the responsibilities in those powers. Again, with the Spider-Man stuff. She has to be careful not to make things worse when she saves people. Now, she never does, but there are moments where it gets close. This is another idea that would have been a lot more interesting were it brought front and center. She's almost reckless a few times, like when she sends a burglar spinning off in a cop car that almost hits a police officer until she pops one of the doors open and he gets scooped up at just the right time so he doesn't get hit. Again, the movie doesn't really tell the story it pretends to. She should make a mistake with her powers as she's swept up in the freedom, the power, and the fame. But it is nice that those ideas are at least broached in a movie I never imagined would actually deal at all with the responsibility of power, selflessness versus fighting crime just to be in the spotlight, and duty to family versus duty to your conscience and your own dreams. Again, not thought-provoking, but at least marginally thoughtful. And I like that right away, we're told what Kara's powers are and what she can't do, through a series of tests conducted by her science whiz friends. She can fly, has super strength, and throws pink round energy balls like a Hadouken. It's nice that she occasionally tries other things, just in case they didn't figure all her powers out, like at the end, when she hopes maybe she has super breath to put out lava, but then it's odd she didn't try that earlier with the burning building. Her power set is kind of standard, except for the energy balls, but those get dull in fights real fast, especially when the Baron gets powers too in the third act, and it's just energy ball throw after energy ball throw. Like the magic wand lightning fights in Harry Potter. The Baron gets green ones because he's evil and a man. It's cool that this is actually an action movie and doesn't feel like it can't have that kind of stuff just because it's for girls, but the action gets a little boring. I will give it the frog, though, who also ends up with powers. And, by the way, all the pets in this end up with powers and somehow also masks. And the frog has this impossibly long tongue, which he uses to push buttons from far away, tie up our heroes toward the end, and even high-five the Baron at one point. The movie has lots of fun with him. But it could be more creative with powers, especially if it's going to be so generic with names. Why not make her a butterfly-themed superhero? That might lend to at least a cooler-looking costume. Kara looks like she's wearing a party dress with a cape. Kara has a jaded and cynical cousin, Corinne, who we're introduced to early but doesn't become a major player in the story until way too late in the game. The movie wants to be about a rivalry between them. Corinne, who is jealous of Kara's status as princess and then as the town's superhero, which she learns before it's made public with the typical convenience of just happening to be right outside Kara's door when she flies into her room through the window as Super Sparkle. The rivalry is supposed to drive home how Kara's heart isn't in the right place anymore as they fight for the spotlight. But again, it never seems like Kara's handling things as incorrectly as the movie wants me to think she is. Corinne also conveniently discovered how Kara got her powers by pretending like Kara told her about her powers on purpose to the computer hacker Wonder Twins, who mentioned the butterfly because they think she already knows about it. So Corinne grabs a butterfly net, nabs the butterfly, and gets superpowers from it. And she becomes Dark Sparkle, which is A, an even dumber name than Super Sparkle, B, is totally derivative, and C, it doesn't sound at all like a superhero name. Instead of being a villain, Corinne goes around trying to save people before Super Sparkle can. Dark Sparkle is just like Syndrome, except without the interesting backstory and the resourcefulness. She's jealous of the superhero, tries to steal her thunder by fighting crime. except she doesn't manufacture the crimes to stop them like Syndrome does, and she also has the name of a villain instead of a hero and hopes no one will notice. There are fan rivalries in this town now, people who prefer Super Sparkle and people who prefer Dark Sparkle, and nobody's bothered by the dark in her name or that she's blatantly ripped off Super Sparkle's intellectual property. That's okay, though. Kara isn't especially inventive herself. She needed the twin geniuses to come up with that name for her, and it's about as generic as Flying Girl, or, I don't know, Princess Power. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, if you're thinking at all while I'm spending this much time and effort to discuss a Barbie movie, but Cap, you said the generic stuff feels authentic to the Barbie brand, and it makes little girls feel like they can use their own imaginations and do whatever they want with Barbie. Well, that's true for the dolls, but like I also said, movies like this serve well as an example for the kinds of things you can do with your toys, which means it should still be a good story. The random name generator superhero name, the dollar store costume, and the Superman powers minus a few and plus reuse power makes the movie look lamer than it should, given the effort that was put into making the script clever and the main character likable. I can excuse some things because it feels like girls playing with dolls, but just like it's more important for dialogue in a movie to sound authentic than it is for it to actually be how people really talk, which is usually so loaded with likes and ums and tangents, it's hard to keep people's attention. It's cool to make your movie feel like a little kid is making it, but it maybe shouldn't actually be what a little kid would make. Super Sparkle and Dark Sparkle join forces at the end to stop the Baron from destroying Windamore with lava from Mount Dormant. That's fun, after he wakes up the volcano and sends magma flowing across the bridge. Corinne says she might not like Kara, but she's not a complete jerk, and they should work together to solve the problem. When they have the Baron locked away in the panic room the parents were just using during the big fight, they both apologize to each other. Corinne for being jealous, and Kara for losing her perspective and basking in the glory of being a famous superhero, heavy-handedly telling us exactly what the movie is supposed to be about and what we should have learned. Friendship and teamwork is important, and helping others is more important than praise and adoration. And when her parents, who also have a character arc, agree to let her keep being a superhero, which they told her earlier she had to give up because they were afraid for her safety, even though they loved Super Sparkle before they realized it was their daughter, the message is that parents are going to worry, but they ultimately have to let their children take risks and be their own people. I guess that's for parents who get suckered into watching this with their kids. And the last lesson is that people need gardens. Gardens are important. The best thing Kara can do for the community is make her freaking garden, which she finally does to prove that she's figured out her priorities again. Being a superhero is cool, kids, but one way we can all be a hero is by planting a tree. This message brought to you by Captain Planet and the Planeteers. The power is yours! There's also a blogger named Wes, who's a nobody working for himself and not getting anywhere until he gets lucky and covers Super Sparkle before anyone else does. This feels like a major subplot, which ends up getting dropped later. He starts writing articles about her and gains a huge following. At one point, when the Sparkles are fighting for dominance, Kara loses her high-tech ring that does everything, including giving her a lip gloss. Wes finds it, then looks at pictures of Kara and Super Sparkle separately, puts two and two together, and realizes they're the same person. The way this character's been built up, like Super Sparkle's Lois Lane, but looking a little like Clark Kent, I thought there would be a conversation between them, an interview. She'd convince him not to tell everyone who she is, or maybe there'd be a twist where she asks him not to do that, but he turns out to have no integrity and does it anyway. I also thought this was our love interest, but the movie does nothing with that. The twist is that Wes publishes an article revealing Super Sparkle's identity, and now everyone knows. Turns out he was just a plot device to tell everyone else Kara wouldn't want to know. And the ring thing makes Kara look like an idiot, and not so that she can learn any lesson from it. It's just a plot contrivance. She wears the same lightning ring in both guises? I mean, the twins should have been smarter than that when they made it, but she also should have told them, hey, wait a minute, I probably shouldn't wear this all the time, in case someone sees it on both Kara and Super Sparkle's hands and puts it together. She also does almost nothing with the 007 gadget. It's just there so this will happen. The twins themselves are also really underutilized. They have some fun technobabble, but they're built up like they'll be part of the main action at the end, and they're really not. They turn Kara's room into a secret lair with monitors that pop out all over the place when she's doing superhero stuff, and like what the tick wishes Arthur's apartment did, but not much is done with that either. They're set up like they'll be the tech team running point on missions like Team Arrow or Team Flash, and as much as I hate that every superhero, at least on TV, seems to have that, it's weird that they do so little of that here. I know I say this about a lot of stuff, but it watches like the pilot to a TV show that never got made. I think the first half is better than the second. There are too many elements that don't pay off in a satisfying way, and the novelty of this actually being kinda watchable and reveling in the superhero stuff wore off for me about halfway through. Still, forgettable as it may be, it's more clever than it has any right to be, and I think I wrote more about it than I would have if I didn't see some potential here. I'm giving Barbie in Princess Power a 2 out of 4. Join me again tomorrow, folks, to find out what I've been given next to review for the 12 Days of Rewind. I'd like to say thanks right now to all of our Patreon producers, and if you would like to help us out on Patreon, go to patreon.com/Geekvolution. At the $10 tier, you can become a Patreon producer, and I will read your name at the end of every rewind. And also, at just the $2 tier, you can get early episodes of Superhero Rewind and lots of other really great perks, including Geekvolution After Dark, our uncensored talk show that Eric and I do twice a month. Thanks to all of our Patreon producers, including Dylan Musciello, Jackson Rasco, Nick Manna, Eamon Singleton, Cletus Winslow, Remy LeBlanc, Derek Jacob, The Day Ghost, Michael Gulick, Magpie's Nest Productions, Kareem Roberts, Lot 10 Underground, Michael Mark Micheletti, Carl Maxey, Dimitri J, John Johnson, Jacob Snyder, Nathan Hanford, Aram Zangana, Joey Crouch, Sartaj Govind Singh, Ethan, Guidi, Caleb, Malik Myers, Lone Wolf Jedi of Gotham, Chewbacca's Lover, David Crabtree, Simeon Scott, Justin Hayes, Marie Flowers, Clark Whitfield, Ian McKee, and Jeffrey Patron. See you again tomorrow, folks. Thanks again for listening. I'm Captain Logan.